My soon-to-be ex-wife, my wife, and I met in high school in 1992, when we were both 17 years old. We have been together ever since, and she is the only woman I have ever been with. We married 5 years later at the age of 22, after graduating from college. A year later, we had our first child, a boy who is now 22. We had our second child, a boy who is now 17, a year later. We have been married for 23 years. I have provided for my wife and built her a house. I have also worked hard at my job. I provided her with the life she desired. Undoubtedly, we encountered challenges, but even the most resilient marriages experience difficulties at times. We were able to navigate these challenges and emerge stronger on the other side. However, the discovery of her infidelity was particularly disconcerting. I recall March 2020, when I first sensed something was amiss. For approximately 2 months prior, we had been in a state of malaise. I was recuperating from an injury, from reconstructive knee surgery, which was performed in the fall of 2019 due to a blown ACL. I still lacked sufficient movement at the time. My range of motion was approximately 50 to 5 degrees on my knee, which had a significant impact on numerous aspects of my daily life. As I was on workers' compensation due to the injury occurring at work, I was unable to perform my usual household duties, resulting in a considerable backlog of tasks. My sons attempted to assist, but the tasks that I was previously capable of performing were either postponed or delegated to my wife, who was not satisfied with this arrangement. Additionally, the pace of activities in the bedroom between us came to a standstill. Prior to my injury, this pace had already slowed down, but following my injury, it completely ceased. During this period, my wife's sister, Suzanne, was spending more time socializing with her friends. Subsequently, between November 2019 and March 2020, it became a regular occurrence. It is perhaps unsurprising that I did not attach any significance to it. Over the 23 years I had been in a relationship with her, there had never been any reason for me to doubt her trustworthiness. She maintained her own social circle, and I had my own friends. We were able to maintain a healthy balance between our individual social lives. In January of this year, I began to observe Susan's behavior as somewhat unusual. Despite the general malaise that pervaded our relationship, she had previously been quite affectionate towards me. However, she suddenly ceased to offer the usual displays of physical affection, such as hugs and kisses. Additionally, she became preoccupied with her mobile phone, which she held close to her body for extended periods. Prior to this, she had been quite forthcoming about sharing and discussing various online content with me. However, this behavior also changed, and she became increasingly guarded about her phone and online activities. She began to share recipes on Pinterest, memes, and other content. She also became more guarded about her phone, and her interactions with me became more abrupt. As March arrived, we found ourselves in a situation where our chosen careers fell under the essential designation, allowing us to avoid working from home. I have recently been cleared to return to work. After a 5-month period of inactivity, I was eager to resume my activities. The 5 months spent rehabilitating my knee and being unable to engage in physical pursuits were particularly challenging. I enjoy physical activities and am an avid martial artist, typically training 4 days a week. Additionally, I undertook numerous home projects within a week or two of the lockdown. My wife informed me that she would have to start working additional hours. I did not anticipate this, given the nature of her work. I assumed that her new schedule would involve working every other day. However, it turned out to be a daily commitment, with her returning home 3 or more hours later than usual. She would then proceed to shower and spend a brief period of time with me and our 17-year-old child. As a result, I was forced to rely on my own resources to support myself on my knee. We began to resume our intimate relationship, but as one might expect, she was not mentally or emotionally present, which I quickly discerned. By early April, the situation had become increasingly clear to me. The accumulated evidence suggested that she was engaging in an extramarital affair. At that point, I decided that I needed to ascertain the truth, so I conducted an exhaustive online search. I began to search for indications of infidelity in my partner. I soon discovered that she exhibited numerous behaviors that could be indicative of such a relationship. My subsequent search focused on how to identify such behavior. I initially examined her social media, specifically her Facebook entries from several months prior. These revealed that she was in frequent communication with a small group of individuals, including her friends and colleagues. Additionally, there were numerous images of her socializing with this group on various occasions. The individuals depicted in these images represent a diverse group, including her closest colleagues from the workplace and a few unfamiliar faces. However, a notable pattern emerges. In numerous instances, a single male figure appears in multiple pictures, positioned in a manner that is notably intimate, with his arm around her shoulder or hand on her back. It was evident that he was inappropriately close to her, with his arm around her lower back. This was highly unprofessional and unwelcome behavior. However, this was not the most concerning aspect of the situation. It transpired that this individual was also a friend of hers on Facebook and followed her on Instagram. This prompted me to investigate his Facebook account. I proceeded to access the account, only to discover that I was blocked. This raised the question of why I was blocked from seeing this individual's Facebook account, given that he was a friend of hers. I was now in a position where I felt compelled to investigate further. At this point, I was not attempting to deny the situation. I was aware that she was engaging in an extramarital relationship with this man. My objective was to ascertain the extent of their involvement and the duration of their relationship. I set out to ascertain the duration of the affair and the extent of contact between the two parties. Over the course of April and May, I conducted a detailed investigation, utilizing the extensive data available from phone, text, and email records. Prior to this, our family had a prepaid mobile phone plan, which enabled me to access a substantial amount of information. The data history of the wife revealed that the two most frequent numbers she had interacted with from October 2019 to April 2020 were those of the subject in question and a number that had not been seen before. It was not difficult to ascertain which number this was. A quick check on Google confirmed that the number belonged to the individual in the photographs who had blocked the subject on Facebook. For the sake of convenience, this individual will be referred to as Kevin. At this juncture, the picture became even more clear. However, a significant number of their messages and texts were disorganized, indicating that she was deleting a considerable amount of them. I was aware that she was engaging in an extramarital affair with this individual, yet the data did not provide concrete evidence. I required further corroboration. I informed my friend James of my findings. He inquired as to whether I had confronted my wife with the evidence I had gathered. I informed him that I had not done so because I felt that the evidence was insufficient. At this point, he informed me of an app that I could download in order to spy on my wife's communications in real time. I will not mention the name of the app as I am unsure of the rules regarding its use on this platform. I proceeded to install and sync the app. I increased my data plan and, within days of doing so, finally observed a text string between the two of them discussing the previous night's activities and making plans for the following weekend. I was profoundly affected by this discovery. It could be described as a gut punch. In hindsight, this moment can be considered my D-Day. In the days following the discovery, I found myself in a state of emotional distress. In an effort to cope, I deliberately created distance between myself and the other party. On the day in question, she was visibly shaken and attempted to console me, inquiring as to the cause of my distress. However, I evasively dismissed her inquiries and departed from her presence. I was unable to even look at her. This woman with whom I had shared 23 years of my life and who I had given everything I could and more to as a husband. She had chosen to engage in an extramarital relationship with a man who was only 5 years older than our eldest son. By the third day, I was no longer saddened. I had reached a state of numbness. I was enraged, so I accessed the application and discovered that they were indeed communicating in real time. She informed Kevin that she was aware of his infidelity. I inquired about this matter with him that evening, but he responded with derision. He collapsed to the floor and laughed for approximately 5 minutes. It was evident that he was not concerned about my feelings. I am uncertain how or why this occurred, but he has effectively distanced himself from me. I recognize that I have lost him. This outcome may be perceived as karma, but I find it somewhat amusing. Her facial expression conveyed a certain degree of incredulity. Kevin attempted to console her, suggesting that if she truly cared for her, she would not have sought solace from another. However, the tone of her responses indicated a growing doubt. She had the audacity to leave our marriage, citing my inability to fulfill the role of a husband due to a legitimate injury. The injury sustained and the subsequent affair, which continued for nearly an entire year, were sufficient to prompt her to reconsider her position. The prospect of losing me to another woman was a significant factor in this decision. During this period, I was also implementing the second part of my plan for retribution. In September, I met with a family attorney to initiate the divorce proceedings. I had accumulated a substantial amount of evidence to support my case. The evidence I had accumulated up to that point indicated that New York would be an at-fault state in a divorce proceeding. The substantial evidence I had gathered demonstrating Suzanne's infidelity reinforced my position that I could successfully pursue a divorce. My lawyer advised me to organize my financial records in preparation for asset division. I took this advice further by taking steps to secure my financial future independently. I withdrew all of the funds from our joint account and transferred them to my personal account. Additionally, I began searching for a new apartment, which was part of phase 2 of my plan. It is now November, and I have not altered my behavior. In fact, I have intensified it. This is where my friend Na comes into play. For context, Na and Suzanne have never been close. I met Na in the first year of high school, 2 years before I met Suzanne. Suzanne has long perceived Na as a potential rival, given her status as Na's closest female friend. Suzanne has never explicitly voiced her distrust of Na, but her behavior towards Nina suggests an underlying lack of confidence. Conversely, Nina has consistently demonstrated a lack of admiration for Suzanne, noting her perceived imposition early in my relationship with Suzanne. She attempted to integrate herself into our small group of friends, whereas I did not do the same with Suzanne's set of friends, which annoyed Nina because she was aware of the reasons behind Suzanne's actions within Suzanne's circle. Even now, there are no male friends aside from Kevin, whereas Na is the only female in my group. Na had been stranded overseas due to the virus and finally returned to New York on November 3rd. James, Joey, and I decided we were going to celebrate her return with a KN at Joey's house for dinner and drinks. There were only 5 of us: James, Joey, Joey's wife, also Nina's sister. Na and myself were committed to following the CDC guidelines. Na, in her role as the instigator, devised a plan to provoke Suzanne. She proposed that we take photographs in a similar style to those I had discovered of Suzanne and Kevin several months prior and post them to my Facebook account. This is precisely what we did. It was not until the 5th that Susan became aware of it, as I surmised that a few friends noticed my updates. Furthermore, she observed the proximity between me and Nina, which caused her distress as she still believed I was unfaithful. I believe she wanted to accuse me, but she was aware that I had been in Europe for most of the year. This did not deter her from attempting to reprimand me that night for being overly familiar in the photos. I saw this as an opportunity to deliver a decisive blow. I asked, "What about the photos with you and Kevin?" In the previous year, he had been somewhat handsy in the images, but I did not become upset about it. I simply observed and reflected on the situation. It was the first time I even mentioned the man's name throughout this process. As she tried to justify the images, she realized that she had not known about them. She had not seen them. This was a significant realization for her. I use Facebook when I choose to post something. I make it a point to create an event around it. This is why the images with Na specifically gained so much attention. In our social circle, he is known to be overly familiar with others. He is a friendly individual, but there is no romantic interest. I am sorry if the images cause distress. I will remove them. However, it was not the images themselves that caused distress, but rather the deceitful behavior exhibited by the individual in question. The individual in question had been lying to me about working extra hours and spending time with friends. This behavior caused distress. Suzanne has been particularly clingy since that night. Furthermore, she has been attentive to me, attempting to initiate displays of affection and intimacy. I have consistently rebuffed her advances, while simultaneously documenting her interactions with Kevin. It is important to note that by this point, I had already become desensitized to any romantic desire I may have had. I had to consider the possibility that my marriage might have been salvageable had I not initiated the first phase of my plan. She was confiding in him that I had become increasingly distant, that she was unsure of how to proceed, and that she felt I held negative sentiments towards her. She states that she is unable to see him anymore due to the overwhelming guilt she feels, as though karma is suffocating her. She is unwilling to risk losing me, as she still loves me and believes it is crucial to save her marriage before it is too late. In response, Kevin loses his composure, stating that he does not love her in the same way and that she is making a mistake. He asserts that she cannot simply discard their relationship without consideration. The final deadline was approximately 3 weeks ago, extending from November to December. Throughout this period, Susan was in a state of uncertainty, attempting to ascertain my mental state and unable to determine whether I was genuinely uninterested. Meanwhile, Kevin was persistently contacting her via phone, but she was not responding. I frequently observed her checking her phone but quickly putting it away. Phase 2 of the plan was now complete. The divorce papers had been drafted, and I had secured a studio department in company. Those familiar with the New York City area will be aware of the location in question and have signed a 2-year lease. I had secured a 1-year lease on the property. I had invested the entirety of my financial resources into my personal account, and I was prepared to take decisive action. As it happens, we are now at Thanksgiving. My eldest child and his girlfriend were hosting a modest gathering of our immediate families, including their girlfriend and her parents. She is an only child. In addition to these individuals, I, Susan, and our youngest child were in attendance. The evening was a success. My eldest girlfriend is training to become a chef and is responsible for all culinary duties. She is not particularly adept at cooking, as I discovered when I had to maintain the pretense of a harmonious relationship with Susan. I initiated physical contact with her on several occasions throughout the evening, including kisses on the cheek, displays of affection, hugs, and embraces. The woman in question was aware of the gestures, which she appeared to enjoy. It should be noted that this was the first occasion on which I had touched this woman since I kissed the top of her head on the night she confronted me in October. This period of approximately 2 months had made me feel repulsed, but I was compelled to act. I could not risk the success of my plan. Furthermore, maintaining a certain distance from her in the presence of my sons, my eldest girlfriend, and her parents would have triggered a series of reactions. Consequently, my youngest sibling expressed a desire to spend the night with his elder brother. Suzanne and I proceeded to return home. On the journey, she expressed gratitude for my support and inquired about the challenges I was facing. However, I reassured her that I was there for her. I had to suppress the urge to laugh hysterically and replied that I was aware of her feelings. That night, I decided to take action. I considered that, given the circumstances, it might be beneficial to engage in sexual intercourse. I reasoned that it would be preferable to delete her from my life than to remain in a state of limbo. I will not provide a detailed account of the incident, but I will state that it was not a sexual encounter. The woman in question was a lifeless corpse, lying on the ground, attempting to comprehend the circumstances that had transpired. There was no indication of affection or intimacy following my departure, even after I had showered and retired to my office for the night. Regarding her bewilderment, I did take the precaution of using a condom for the first time in 2 decades. She was undoubtedly perplexed by the situation, yet she did not inquire further. It was evident that she was aware of my previous sexual encounters with Kevin, which had occurred over several months. The following day, I accessed the data from my spy application, and to my surprise, she had responded to Kevin. He had expressed his feelings in a rather intense manner. Given the depth of her feelings for him, she felt that attempting to reignite a relationship that had already ended was a futile exercise. Furthermore, she believed that she had already spent a significant amount of time in his company, and that she deserved to experience the love and affection of a man who would cherish her. It is worth noting that this individual is 27 years old, which is 5 years older than our eldest son. A year has elapsed. The woman in question is an older married mother of 2. She has chosen to engage in behavior that has the potential to damage the marriage and the home that she shares with her partner. The latter is a man who presents himself as attractive and has a sensitive side. In response to his recent actions, the woman has stated that she still has feelings for him and enjoys their time together, but that she is unable to continue the relationship. She stated that she still considers me to be the love of her life, but that I will always have a place in her heart. She indicated that she would be open to maintaining a friendship with me if I so wished, but that the physical relationship between us is over. I asked her to see me one last time that week, and she agreed. I suggested that this could be our one more for the road, but she rejected this idea. I am unsure who I am in this situation. To elucidate further, I informed her of the aforementioned events the previous night. I duly added this information to the archive I had compiled. On December 4th, I initiated Phase 3 of Operation Shinobi Ghost, which was the commencement of divorce proceedings. I had obtained the divorce papers and had established a new residence. I was now in the process of gradually transferring my belongings to this new location. Prior to leaving the residence, it was necessary to inform my sons of the situation. On the aforementioned Friday evening, I contacted my former U.S. telephone number and requested their presence in my office. I proceeded to present them with the details of the situation, including the information that their mother had been unfaithful to me for over a year and that I intended to file for divorce. A year-old was particularly affected by this, having recently experienced his first instance of infidelity. His first girlfriend had cheated on him just 4 months prior, and witnessing his heartbreak a second time at the realization that his own mother was capable of such actions had a profound impact on him. My eldest reacted in a more resilient manner, suggesting that he take his brother in to live with him until this situation stabilized. I concurred with this proposal. He proceeded to pack some of his belongings and inquired as to my well-being. I reassured him that I would be fine and that he would be as well. I then informed him that we would emerge from this situation unscathed. The most challenging aspect of this process was now behind us, and it was time to address the remaining issues. Over the following weeks, James and I worked together to gradually remove some of my most sensitive items from the house. I provided him with a comprehensive list of these items. While Susan and I were at work, James took possession of the spare key. This was for items that Susan would not notice were missing unless we informed her that they were gone. I also obtained a new phone number and informed those who needed to know, including James, Joey, my mother, and my new contact information. Meanwhile, I maintained the pretense of normalcy with Suzanne, who remained unaware of the changes. I intermittently expressed affection towards her. I maintained contact with her to prevent her from pursuing the matter further with Kevin. While the level of contact is not as intense as it was previously, there is still a certain emotional involvement. I have gathered all the relevant data, including call logs, text messages, images, emails, and other forms of communication. I have also created printouts of these materials. The total cost of these materials and printing services is likely to exceed $1,000. I spent approximately $500 on supplies from Staples, including printer ink, paper, binders, and other materials. I cataloged everything in order from the beginning of the affair until the most recent event, which occurred on December 16th. I created 14 binders, each containing a specific set of materials. I then placed each binder in a box and gift-wrapped it. I addressed the boxes to various individuals, including my mother, my father, who passed away 7 years ago, her parents, her 2 sisters, her brother, and her HR department. I should also mention that Kevin works for the same company. There is an explicit prohibition against intercompany relationships due to the nature of her profession. Several of her acquaintances, including Kevin and Kevin's parents, transported all of the aforementioned items to the post office and dispatched them on December 16th. The items were scheduled for delivery on 22 or December 24th, which was successful. Consequently, we are now on Christmas Eve. Suzanne returned home at the usual time, but I am uncertain if she had seen Kevin. I ceased monitoring her activity on the application on the 18th, as I had obtained sufficient information. The mileage I required from it was duly obtained, as was customary. She engaged in personal hygiene activities and socialized with me for a brief period. I relocated her to the living room sofa, where she retired for the night. The long-awaited final phase was imminent. The nuclear option I had been preparing since June was finally about to be deployed in the middle of the night. I arose and completed one of the 3 remaining binders with the divorce papers taped to the inside cover, placing it on my side of the bed with a note. I wished her a Merry Christmas and left my old phone and the business card of my lawyer. I packed up the remainder of my most needed items, which filled 2 backpacks, and left my home, which I had occupied for 23 years. This was the last time I would be leaving my residence. My friend had departed 1 week prior. I am now completely off the grid and no longer in contact with Suzanne. She has blocked me on Facebook, but I still have access to her account. I am monitoring the situation and its subsequent developments. I am gratified to report that the packages I sent have reached all intended recipients. Suzanne is facing severe criticism from her youngest sister, who has condemned her in the strongest terms. Suzanne's parents have also expressed their disapproval. My mother, in particular, has been highly disapproving, and her comments about Suzanne were particularly harsh. I am aware that my mother has a tendency to be somewhat severe in her judgments, but the information I have received from a mutual friend who works in the same company as Suzanne and Kevin indicates that they are being placed on administrative leave. Therefore, it is likely that she will be unemployed at the beginning of 2021. The final 2 binders have been transferred to my lawyer as evidence for my impending divorce. The last one has been placed in my storage unit to be burned in Joey's fire pit when the divorce is finalized. I do not feel guilty about this. I spent 23 years in this relationship and provided her with a home and a family. I provided her with the life I felt we both deserved and loved her unconditionally. I have never wavered in my commitment to her, nor have I ever considered breaking my vows when an issue arose that I felt was affecting our marriage. I approached her to discuss the matter and we resolved it as best we could. She chose to seek comfort in the arms of another man rather than come to me and express her dissatisfaction with our sexual relationship at the time she decided to leave. I have no sympathy for my former spouse's actions or for her. I am indifferent to the consequences of my own actions, as I stand to lose only my house, car, and a few $100s a month. However, given that the divorce is filed under the statute of adultery and that my former spouse is at fault, I anticipate that the court will accept the overwhelming evidence I have provided. Consequently, I have decided to terminate all contact with my former spouse and to move on.